First thing that I thought was interesting is NASCAR has a board of directors inside the company, but that board of directors, of which Jim France is a board member, if I understand this correctly, answers to the board for the France Family Trust, which also Jim France is a board member of. So everything serves the interest of the France family, which is a bad business model for the other people involved. It's all about put money in that France family pocket, and that will not grow anything ever.
Following is a production of the Garage Area.
All right, welcome into the garage area. I'm Adam, and Ryan is here with me as well. We're going to talk a little bit about the NASCAR trial that took place where 2311 and Front Row Motorsports were suing NASCAR for antitrust action. I don't know if that's the right terminology there, but we know the result of the trial. There was no, I guess it wasn't a result of the trial. Resulting incident because of the trial was that both sides settled. We don't know the full details of that. We probably never will. But uh, long story short, both sides came to an agreement, and they are going to give teams permanent charters. And what else was in that as well, Ryan?
Um,
What was the other thing that came out of that?
I know there was some things in the charter agreement that changed. There's like the five strike rule or something that the teams can strike something down so many times, and I know they got a little bit more international revenue, and I assume some revenue percentages and stuff changed within that because they got permanent charters out of it. Um, I assume 2311 part of the agreement is they got some of their money back from being unchartered for the rest of the year as a settlement issue. I think may have been in that. But that's all the more I can remember at this point.
Yeah. Basically, everything that I've heard is a positive for the teams, which before the NASCAR had all the positives, from what I can understand. And so the teams getting any more money out of this is obviously a good thing for them. And basically, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm just going to tell you what I've gathered from this whole conversation and what my thoughts are. And if you have a differing opinion, just cut me off and let me know what you think. But uh, basically, the issue is that NASCAR has so much control over how the sport runs, which is not a bad thing, but also what the teams get paid. And that's where Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan, Bob Jenkins had an issue, saying basically, you're dictating the terms of our agreement and we have no negotiating leverage, which is not good in a business practice when one side has all the leverage. And that was basically the argument. Hey, we want to race, we want to be able to make money. We are providing a service to this organization called NASCAR, essentially, and we're the ones that aren't getting to share in the revenue of it because everything goes through NASCAR first. That's not fair to us. So because of that, they wanted to make sure that there was some sort of not legislation, but some sort of legal paperwork saying that they're able to get a bigger piece of the pie. That's what Denny has said all along on his podcast when he was able to talk about it, was we want more money, we want a bigger seat at the table. And apparently there was an owners council that gave them a seat at the table, but it didn't have any decision making power, which is it's like that was not the same thing that the teams were talking about. We don't want to just be briefed on what's happening. We want to be able to have some input on it. And it seemed like that wasn't the case at all. So now it seems that they have a little bit more of a seat at the table. Whatever that entails, I don't know yet. Hopefully Bob Pockers will get on that, or Jordan Bianchi, and somebody will get us to the bottom of that eventually. Um, as far as it being a good thing or a bad thing for the sport, I want to hear your opinion on this, but I'll give mine real quick and then I'll get out of your way. I think the lawsuit had to happen for things to be better for the sport. It's like the NASCAR executives needed a wake-up call, and the only way you were going to get a wake-up call is if you got in their pocket or attempted to take money away from them somehow. And obviously they didn't like that. They don't like the fact that teams might have an ability to make some decisions, and so they said no, and we want to go to court instead. Try basically both playing a massive game of chicken because NASCAR has all the money. They can spend a lot of money on legal fees, but the other guy that has a lot of money is Michael Jordan, and he was able to financially back that whole lawsuit on the plaintiff's end. So I think that it's mostly a benefit for the sport to say, hey, these teams are for real now. Not everybody's going to mess with it. Unfortunately, it has to be somebody like Michael Jordan, not because of his influence, but because of his money, that is able to push back a little bit. Even though Denny was kind of the voice of this throughout the whole process. And uh, I think that it's a net negative for NASCAR because fans like us can see what they're doing to ruin the sport is probably a too harsh of a term, but the things that they're doing that have a negative impact. And uh, we just did a podcast about that. The things that we think are worse off now because of decisions that have been made. So I think that they needed to hit some kind of a wake up call, all in all. And people are saying, oh, it's a blemish on the sport, but like it was wolves in sheep's clothing anyways. Like you and I could see that this was not going in a positive direction. For me, as somebody that watches every race every week, it doesn't make me think any less of NASCAR because I didn't have a good opinion of them as a whole. I'm talking about the sanctioning body. Um, so this didn't change my opinion of that. Maybe from the outside perspective, that does hurt the look of it a little bit. But I would think that it would kind of draw some interest as like, well, what was going on and what's going to change now? And if you see behind the curtain as to what was going on and what's supposed to change, that should all be positive. So I don't agree that it's a blemish for the sport. I think that a lot of the things that happened up to the lawsuit were blemishes on the sport. I don't think the lawsuit itself is necessarily that. I think that was the pivoting point. That's all I got to say. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with everything. No, the it definitely had to be a lawsuit for it to come to this point because the NASCAR just had too much power and money, and I don't think we understand how much more money NASCAR has than the rest of the teams. And it took Michael Jordan type money to put a fight to this. I feel like there's still a lot of things in this sport that we're not going to like about it. I don't think it's going to clear the air for everything. I think what this does, it brings a better business model to the teams and maybe allows the teams to survive more, keep maybe bring good drivers, deserving drivers, maybe make the less sport less reliant on at least the teams less resilient on sponsors and sponsorship money. I did hear some of this may have hurt smaller teams in itself because the big teams didn't need as big a sponsors, so they gobbled up some of the small sponsors the small teams had. Um, but of course, they talked about how many teams originally started under the charter agreement have failed because of NASCAR's business model. Had they had more money, their little sponsors may have helped them out too. So um, I don't know how much effect this will have on like racing product that people complain about. I think there's still going to be a lot of complaints against NASCAR, but for sure something in this business model had to change, and this is the first start of it. Um,
I guess I would say at the end of the day, I think that the that you should be able to cover your cost by showing up to the racetrack. Like I feel like last place should cover being there, even money. You shouldn't necessarily make any money on last place, but for what it cost, the average cost to bring a race car to the track, and be able to start it in the race. Forget about the cost of damage and whatever else. That's an incurred cost. That's fault. But as far as starting and finishing in last place, should let you break even. And then it should get profitable from there, from 39th on up. That's my opinion. And whoever wins the race should make a lot of money, in my opinion.
yeah, I agree with that. I don't know much more about it, or what to think much more about that. as long as the teams can survive, that and it gives values to teams to be able to sell their charters and stuff and whatnot also at that point. So um, in the end, I've read some things that says this probably increased the charter values itself too. Another thing that happened in the agreement I read somewhere is that NASCAR gets 10% of the charter sales, and they did have 2%, but NASCAR's going to get, and since it's a permanent thing and NASCAR can't rip it away, I imagine less and less charters might be sold at this point. But when they do sell, they're going to be worth far more. So I don't really see much wrong with that. But um, yeah, teams. I think for the best thing for the teams, if they can get to the track and back without losing anything, finishing last even minus some wreck costs and stuff, and then the sponsorship money is just cake on top, I guess, where the term is. So um, yeah, I uh, that's I'm losing what I want to say. But I agree with everything you said.
Okay. Um, yeah, basically, I think that the finishing prize of the purse should cover your cost of being there. And then, like you just said, having a sponsor should be icing on the cake from there. Let's go over a couple things that we knew going into the trial and things that we found out through the course of the trial. Um, these are just some notes that I made from the Teardown podcast with Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi. Like, I don't know what your go-to was in order to follow the trial, but that daily podcast that those guys did, covering their time in court, was literally all I listened to. I mean, what Jeff and Jordan had to say was exactly what I was looking forward to every day. Was what were their thoughts, what was their interpretation of things, and if it wasn't for them, I would not have near the peek behind the curtain that I had. Because I'm not gonna read stories on the Athletic. I'm gonna listen to them talk about it. I don't necessarily care about all the legal proceedings, so to speak. I'm more interested in what things came out in discovery and how that caused a judge to rule. Um, I am interested in court proceedings as a whole separate thing, but that has nothing to do with my interest in NASCAR. So again, we're not going to get into the in-depth analysis of what took place in the courtroom. All we're going to do is based on the notes that I made of things that they brought up that I thought were interesting, we're just going to talk about them and comment on them. The number one thing in this trial was it had already been established that NASCAR is a monopoly. That wasn't up for debate. That had been established. Like, if you want to race a stock car at the highest level, you're going to have to race in NASCAR. You're going to have to deal with the France family. Nothing wrong with that. That's not illegal. The question was, were they engaging in illegal monopolistic practices because of that? Antitrust things, which I think that they would have lost this case had it gone all the way to a verdict. I think that they pretty well were showing that yes, they were behaving in an antitrust way. That's not really what we're even here to debate, though. The one of the things that, and I made some of these notes so long ago. One of the things I have written down is there seems to be a difference in what the teams say and what NASCAR thinks. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. It just felt like it. Mm, the biggest thing was how much NASCAR thinks the teams can spend and how much the teams actually have to spend or spend this. That was the biggest discrepancy I saw throughout the case.
Yeah, I agree. It just seems like like you just said, there's a difference in between what it takes to put a car on the track and what it takes to win a race. And NASCAR seemed to think that that was the same thing, and it's clearly not. One of the things that I found interesting was during the jury election test, the different excuses that people have made for why they should be kicked off the jury or uh, just things that they had to disclose to both sides to let them know what their familiarity was with NASCAR or with Michael Jordan or whoever. Uh, the most interesting statement that I thought came from one of the jurors was NASCAR, pointing over at the France family and those at the defense side of the table, NASCAR has killed NASCAR. And the judge said, "You're dismissed." But I would agree with that. I mean, it is them that has put us in the position that we're in. That hence the whole reason we did that podcast of things that we find wrong with NASCAR. Um, I don't understand how Xfinity is the official internet provider of NASCAR, and yet Verizon is providing internet service at the racetracks for a cost of $100,000 to the teams. That doesn't make any sense to me. The whole hard card thing too. If you're a chartered team, Jordan Bianchi brought this up, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, and that's not something I normally do. It is the whole hard card thing. If you're a chartered team, there should be a certain amount of hard cards that you get because there's obviously a minimum number of people that it takes to put on a race or to be at the track. Why do you have to pay for those on top of your charter? You get a certain amount. If you want extras, you can buy extras. That's fine. But you shouldn't have to also pay for hard cards. Like you're a guaranteed starting spot. Why would you also have to pay for your people to be there? That's dumb. Um, any thoughts on that?
I agree with you. I know like in other racing series, there's this entry fee type deal and stuff. You pay to race and whatnot, but I feel like NASCAR as a whole itself, um, it's not like you have 100 teams trying to race each weekend that you only want the guys that need to pay to come in or willing to pay to come in and race for your prize. You now have your 36 charter teams and maybe a few extras. I mean, I would think you'd want these guys to be here as cost efficient as possible.
Yeah. Um, I kind of pictured this whole thing of like two little kids with a bunch of toys across the floor, and NASCAR is the bigger kid, and they're walking through going, I'm going to take this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, because not only do you have to pay them for the Wi-Fi, you have to pay them for the hard cards. SMT is not SMT anymore because NASCAR owns that data. And so you have to pay them to get your own data off your race car, which you do need. They own more than half the tracks. And that was a big thing about a spin-off series not being able to race at those tracks because they have those locked up along with uh whatever the name of Marcus Smith's company is, SMI. Uh keeping them signing those agreements there so that other racing series can't race at those tracks. And the intellectual properties for the next gen car so that you can't take it and race it at another track. And even that came out in court was like they're like, oh, all they had to do was ask if they could race it at another track. We would have granted them permission. Yeah, sure you would have. Yeah, I don't believe that at all. Uh, you you touched on the three strikes rule. It's now a five strikes rule, which is a good thing. That's that seat at the table we were talking about, four teams. Uh, gold codes was a big thing that basically NASCAR could get rid of all the team owners and everything. They would take one more toy off the floor and they would control everything from the ground up. It would just be drivers. They would be the ones doing that. $610 million to make that a startup investment, and then $500 million a year to maintain that. Something they explored, but they didn't get very far into. I think it's probably better if they let somebody else pay the bill to bring the race cars to the track. Um, I'm not sure. Some of these notes that I have are old, so I'm not. I mean, they went back from the beginning of the trial, and I'm not 100% sure what they mean now. Um, Contingency sponsors is something that I think should be brought back. If I'm not mistaken, the contingency sponsors were in front of the numbers, right along the front fender of the cars, both sides, and those were just little stickers of all the different sponsors that were involved in putting their name in a NASCAR race. Like they sponsored NASCAR as a whole, so you as a official NASCAR race car showing up at the racetrack had to put that sticker on your car, unless for some reason that sponsor conflicted with yours. We did this for years, and then I feel like it was 2018 that started to go away, and I think that was dumb.
Yeah, I think that was something the teams actually wanted. They didn't want to put all those stickers on the cars for their
Yes.
own sponsors. So, um, I mean, whatever I'd say, whatever helps the teams and their sponsors and their schemes is whatever. Although I thought it was neat to have all those stickers and stuff on the car and stuff and whatnot. I think it maybe takes away some of the nostalgia of what the cars looked like and how they handled it. But if it helps the teams, and I guess it is what it is at this point.
But you can't tell me that some of that isn't just like there's no reason that Jegs is conflicting with Ream on Christopher Bell's car.
Well, no
Like
doubt, but
they're not the same thing. Yeah.
no, but I
And
mean,
Sunoco and Progressive, they're not hurting each other.
no, but maybe what the sponsors or teams like the looks of their car to be. Maybe they think it's a cleaner look without those things on there. So, if that helps other sponsorship branding, then that's is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's the point. I like the contingencies. That's my own opinion there. Um, the we were apparently very close to Denny Hamlin merging with Bob Jenkins to own that team at one point. There was I just thought that that was an interesting thing that came out of this story.
Yeah, I
Um,
wasn't there talks with him and uh Johnson too, and with Richard Petty and all that also.
yeah, I think you might be right. I don't know. I didn't know if Jimmy Johnson was involved at that point or not. I think he talked about Richard Petty or
That's
talked
what I
about
couldn't remember if he
owning that
was.
team, but I didn't.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
couldn't
didn't know if
remember.
Jimmy Johnson was involved in that yet or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So that was another possibility. The whole Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan getting together was due to a fake news report. Excuse me. I thought that was interesting that Denny sent Michael the fake headline, and Michael said, "Let me know if you want to do it for real," and they did. And now NASCAR has changed its whole business model because of that whole situation. Uh, this was a little bit sneaky on Front Row Motorsports' part. Was they included the losses that they took in the Truck Series for the money that they had lost as a whole. It's like, dude, it has nothing to do with the Cup Series. Like, you can't include that because of what this is. I mean, that's an issue for sure, but that's not what this lawsuit's about. Come on, man. Uh, that was interesting. I thought it was also interesting that NASCAR had it estimated to be $20 million per car to show up at the racetrack, and 2311 thought that that was a low number. And Bob Jenkins said, "Well, I'm doing it for 14 million." They're showing up at the racetrack. Obviously, they're not winning a whole lot of races, but yeah, that in our family, that would be like Bob Jenkins would be our hero, saving $6 million, showing up at the racetrack. What a cheapskate! I mean, that's exactly that fit right in with us. A lot of concern about the breakaway series. I cannot believe that they were as concerned as they were about SRX. That just is wild to me. That I mean, I would think I would be more concerned about the Cars Tour than SRX. And it had to just be the quality of drivers that they were putting in the cars.
Yeah, I think it was maybe more the drivers. They were more upset that NASCAR drivers were going over there and supporting it than I think they were anything else. But yeah, I just to me SRX was never going to become NASCAR, and I don't know why NASCAR thought that was what was going to be. But um, although NASCAR's gold codes would have been essentially the same thing, so I mean, then that would have been a direct competitor. So SRX owned all the cars and teams and stuff, so NASCAR wanted to do the same thing as SRX, so maybe that's why they were afraid of it. I don't know.
Yeah. I noticed too that like when Haley Deegan was racing and getting a lot of media attention, and then she went over to SRX, it was like that was a black eye on her. Like I remember hearing a little bit of rumbling about that on Twitter and maybe Instagram of NASCAR was unhappy with her for doing that. And then you kind of saw her career tail off after that, which is if that's some, I'm not saying those two things are related. Like I'm not necessarily drawing that parallel, but if they were, that's awful. that if NASCAR had any influence in that. Again, not saying that is the case, just that seems like an awful coincidence.
Yeah, I don't think they're related, but
Um,
that'd be kind of weird.
yeah, exactly. Apparently SRX was hurting the negotiation for the TV deals. At least that was one of their claims. I don't know if that's true or not. Um, I'm just looking through the things that I have here. Some of these things are kind of irrelevant that I wrote down now. Um, I thought it was interesting that it cost Furniture Row Racing with Martin Truex in the 78 in 2017 to win that championship that cost them $45 million to win that championship. That's uh that's interesting. I don't know if that's cost above average, like if they spent 45 extra million dollars to win that championship compared to their average running cost or how that works. But that's a pile of money either way. Um, Maybe this is something that you can shed a little light on for me. I don't know. Did you remember last year, 2 years ago, they talked about on the Dale Jr. download, Jeff Gordon was on there, and he said that Hendrick Motorsports hasn't turned a profit in 20 years. How does
Uh,
that work?
um, but most of these team owners run their company off of their own business. Besides, Rick Hendrick, his most of his money is made through car dealerships. Um, so uh, I guess got to say that's he's pretty much funding the race team of what or making up the difference with his own team. Uh, obviously he has his name on Kyle Larson's car most of the year anymore. So obviously he's spending money on the race team through his other businesses. So I think that's how most teams operate. Joe Gibbs, I'm not sure how. I don't know of what he has on going on the side or background. If maybe he's actually turning enough profit to or breaking even at most at best probably, but I'm not sure how his model is. But I know most all these other teams have some sort of background because I think RFK or Roush has some type of engine shop that I think they build not just for NASCAR, but other things in machining. Brad Keselowski, he has his own machining company and stuff. Penske, I know Penske trucks and stuff and moving company. I think they make there's Penske shocks out there too, shock companies and things and whatnot. Obviously, Bob Jenkins, he has the restaurants and stuff they talked about in the case and whatnot. 2311. I think they're living off of Michael Jordan's basketball career. So, um, any more than that, I don't know. But I think most of these teams are just run their teams off of other businesses.
Which is a wild way to race. I mean, I like for you and me to go to a racetrack that you'd have to do it that way. We'd have to have a day job. You couldn't make a living racing. But to do that at the highest level of sports is just insane to me. Um, Two more things that I want to talk about, and then we can hit anything you want. First thing that I thought was interesting is NASCAR has a board of directors inside the company, but that board of directors, of which Jim France is a board member, if I understand this correctly, answers to the board for the France Family Trust, which also Jim France is a board member of. So everything serves the interest of the France family, which is a bad business model for the other people involved. It's all about put money in that France family pocket, and that will not grow anything ever. Believe me, I work at a company now that seems like that's the way that they run things, is that it's about putting money in the pockets of the owners and not investing back in the company itself. And that doesn't do well for the people further down the list. And I think we're seeing the effects of that over the last 15 years or so.
Yeah, that was didn't they make the comment or whatever that Um, a lot of the profits were just being funneled through the trustees and stuff instead of back into the sport like you just said, whatever. But it was, instead of them counting it as profit and going to the family, it was counted as losses to the company what they were paying the trust. So that was kind of misleading there on NASCAR's part.
Do you have any more or less trust in the Steves, Steve O'Donnell and Steve Phelps?
I I never really thought about them too much until after throughout the trial. I just thought they were there doing their thing. Definitely the way they talk about people in the sport and things going on in sport, I definitely have far less trust for them uh, than I ever had before. So
See, I'm kind of mixed on that. If I was negotiating with Steve Phelps in a charter agreement as a team owner, and he said that I was a stupid redneck that needed to be taken outside and flogged, I'd just laugh at that. I'd be like, I am glad that I am causing you frustration in this process.
yeah,
But obviously, Richard Childress did not take it that way. Um, do you people are calling for Steve Phelps to be fired over that comment? Do you agree with that?
mm, I I think if anybody else was in that position, or if this was any other company, they would have been fired. So probably should be. I
Yeah.
yeah,
He's not bothering me. That's all I'll say. It's like him being there doesn't. I don't have a negative opinion. Like I don't have a positive opinion of Steve Phelps, but I don't necessarily feel like he should lose his job over a private text message sent in a time of frustration.
yeah. Um,
And then kind of this is the last thing that I have, and it's a little bit of a turn off of that is as this trial went on, Johnny Morris, the owner of Bass Pro Shops, had penned a letter essentially saying how disappointed he was in both sides, but especially in NASCAR. And he can't believe that they couldn't resolve this thing on their own and essentially be adults and come to the table and get this figured out. Couldn't believe the disrespect that they had for team owners, especially Richard Childress and everything that he had done. And as an aside to this, Johnny Morris spends a lot of money on the entire sport. He sponsors a couple cars, being the 19 and the 3, one of them being at Joe Gibbs, one of them being at Richard Childress Racing, as well as Xfinity cars for Junior Motorsports, and is a title sponsor of races. And you see their sign at race tracks. They obviously sponsor NASCAR in some degree, and you're always seeing their commercials throughout races. So Johnny Morris and Bass Pro Shops spend a ton of money on the sport of racing. And for him to say, listen, kids, you need to come together. And then immediately after that gets released, the next day they settle. So do you think that that played a part in this whole situation? And do you think that ultimately the biggest money won?
I don't know if it was necessarily the Johnny Morris, but I think it may have had something to do with Richard Childress, because it came out, a document came out that Richard Childress was thinking about selling 40% of his stake, and Richard Childress was told, I forgot the company it was with, but Richard said he signed an NDA, and
Mhm.
I believe at the end of that day, Judge Bell asked NASCAR, "You have till the morning to tell us how you received this information," and then they settled.
Yeah.
And I don't think it ever came out to how
Yeah.
they received this information. And I believe NASCAR is not out of the water on this yet, because I believe Richard Childress is still seeking what's going on. I think NASCAR still has to answer to it. So I don't think NASCAR is out of the woods with this lawsuit. Something else may have came up. They still might be in trouble for something else. So that I found odd at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really all I have to say about the trial itself. Do you think, as a result of that, you view anything differently? Did it pretty much just confirm your suspicions? That's how I feel, that a lot of the things that I was concerned about or suspicions that I had, it basically just said, yeah, this is the case. And do you think that we're headed in a positive direction from here?
Um, I don't know how much direction I'll say. We're definitely in a better direction for the team for sure. I think there's still a lot of decisions that make as far as on track product, of what really I think was hurting NASCAR the most, as far as TV ratings and this and that. But hopefully maybe the teams have more say in what the cars do with these strike rules and things like that. But um, it definitely, I think, puts a little bit more of a eye on NASCAR and their business making decisions, and kind of probably makes them think twice of what they do anymore. So hopefully it'll work out for the better.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully that is the case. Um, I really don't have anything else. You got anything else?
I don't got nothing else.
All right. Well, hopefully before long we're doing these back together in person. By the time that the Daytona 500 rolls around, looking forward to that. We got a couple months yet. Um, until then, I appreciate everybody that is watching and following along on not just YouTube, but on our social medias as well. Ryan will post those in the description if you want to check those out. Make sure you follow us there. Again, thank you everybody for watching, and I want to hear from the fans. Let me know what you think. Are we on the right track, or do we have a differing opinion of what the fans think when it comes to this lawsuit and whether it's good or bad? Does it change your opinion on NASCAR? Any of that kind of stuff? Let us know in the comments. And until then, we'll see you guys next time here in the garage area.